is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I hope that today you will consider this like a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And wherever you receive podcasts, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom and leave a rating and a brief written review? And if you would pass the word along, I would greatly appreciate it. Right now, I just want to talk about some leadership basics. Again, just to recap, whether you're leading yourself or leading a family or leading a cohort group or you're leading where you do your business, I want to talk about 6 things that I think are the basics of a leadership. Number 1. If you're going to be a leader, one thing you have to get right at the very beginning is you need to stay grounded. Oftentimes when you become the leader or when you're in a position of authority over anyone or with anyone, people will begin to tell you how good you are, how effective you are, how they would not be able to survive if it weren't for you. And it's hard to stay humble in those situations. I like the word staying grounded. What will keep you grounded if you're a person of faith, your faith keeps you grounded, for we realize that we're all created in the image of Almighty God. You need to know what your principles are and that you will not violate them. You will not go against your principles or your core beliefs. The moment you start acting and making choices that are not in alignment with your values and your principles, you will begin to hollow yourself out, and eventually, maybe not today, tomorrow, next week, next month, or even next year, but inevitably, your leadership will totally collapse in and on itself. And you can have all sorts of skills and have all sorts of ability, but if you don't stay grounded, and one of the other ways of staying grounded is, what are your priorities? What is it that you're supposed to be doing, and then attend to it? Make sure that you just stay grounded. Never compromise your values. History is lined with stories of people who got off track, got off center, and made a real serious mistake because they didn't see it coming, because we must operate out of our values. So stay grounded, have an appropriate, I'm all for having a strong self-worth and for having a good opinion of yourself, nothing in the world wrong with that. But remember, just look down. If your feet are still on the ground, you're still a member of the human race, regardless of how large your salary is or important your position. Please, leaders, stay grounded. It's absolutely crucial. The second in leadership basics that I want to talk about is communication. Communication seems to cause as many problems as nearly anything that you could mention. Let me tell you what the biggest problem is with the subject of communication. The biggest problem is the illusion that communication has taken place. Oftentimes, I've heard someone make an announcement, send an email, send a letter, send a memo, gather the team together, and make a pronouncement, and think by doing that they have communicated. If you think you have communicated something, repeat it about 7 more times. Find 6 or 7 more ways in which to get the word out. You need to have 6 or 7 touches to even begin to communicate. Early in my leadership days, I thought if I made the announcement, if I sent out the letter, if I referred to it once, twice, if I was really fortunate 3 times, then I would say only the thickest person would not understand what has just taken place and that we have actually done something. The fact of the matter is, I'm as guilty as you are. I need to receive information multiple times and sometimes in multiple ways in order for the message to get through. If you're a leader, you are in the communication business. You can't just farm that out. And I know that in many of the companies and many of the places, there's someone whose assignment it is to communicate. But every one of us, regardless of what position or station of life we find ourselves today, we are in the communication business. There's truth, there's information that we want to pass along. Don't buy into the problem that it has actually taken place. One of the things I like to do after I have tried for a week or two to communicate something is to go to the people to whom I'm seeking to communicate and ask them questions about it. And 9 times out of 10, they will have a little of the information. They may not have a lot of the information. And even worse than all of that, sometimes they will have false information, meaning they heard something different than what was intended to be communicated. So communication is your full-time job. Whether you are leading your family, you're leading a Bible study, you're a leader at church, wherever you are at work, you have to continually make the goal that I must communicate. What I tell people is, when it comes to the area of communication, you have to go to over-communicating. The reason is we have been dealing with it. We've been working on it. We've been massaging it. We've been trying to get the message honed down. And we have lived with it. And we make this false assumption that just because I have been handling this and hearing this and writing this out and contemplating and thinking about it, therefore everyone else is at the same place in life where I am. And it's just simply not true. And leader, if you don't get the basics of good communication down and learn how to communicate a message and communicate it again and say it one more time, you will not be a communicator. That's why I've been belaboring this point. I want to make sure that if you don't get anything else out of this podcast, you will have heard that we are all in the communication business, and it is one of the crucial basics of leadership. I'm not giving these in any particular order. The third one I want to talk about really could be number 1, and that's honesty/integrity. A leader can have all sorts of skills, have a sterling education, have a marvelous, unspotted track record, and all of those things are tremendous. But if you're not a person of integrity, if you're not a woman or man of integrity, and you're not an honest person, again, your leadership is going to become hollowed out and will eventually collapse in upon itself. Be who you are. Have a core set of beliefs and values that you operate from. Our default should be our integrity. Our default should be that we are honest people, and that even when we have to deliver bad news or difficult news, we will do so with integrity and honesty. We'll have care and compassion. Those are important as well. But don't have shifting values and don't get into situation ethics. Be a woman or man of integrity and honesty. And when you do that, you'll have leadership that is built to last. But if you forego your integrity, eventually everything will collapse. Integrity is a leadership basic. The next one is a basic of leadership is you are going to have to be continually on the lookout for innovation, and you're going to have to help us manage change. One of the things is that causes trouble here is there is this failure of nerve. We know what needs to be done. We know what change absolutely must take place. We also know there is a segment of the stakeholders that are not going to be happy with the change, and therefore we shrink because we lose our nerve. It could be they're the ones who pay our salary. It could be they are the people we socialize with and have become our friends. And those relationships have become so important to us, we don't want to do anything to rock the boat and to mess things up. You are their leader to help shepherd change. One of the things that a leader does, whether it's in our family or at work or wherever, is you have to help us navigate the waters of change. And you, my brothers and sisters, are living in one of the greatest eras of human history, where change is coming rapidly and continually. Not all change is good, but not all status quo is good either. To be a leader, even if you are not by nature an innovator or an innovative person, get some people around you who are. Don't just change for the sake of change, but change for the value and the mission of the organization in which you're leading. And you are going to have to help us, leader. If our leaders can't help us navigate change and find some innovative ways to still do what we need to do, then leader, you're going to become obsolete. One of the basics of leadership, we need someone to march with us through the ever-changing landscape of life. The next one, leadership basic, one of the basics has to do with morale. A part of the responsibilities of the leader is to build morale. Oftentimes, when I have become a part of a particular new situation, one of the first things you know is there is low morale. Oftentimes, there's just low morale because there's a change in leaders and people are uncertain and unsettled. Other times, there have been low morale because there have been some problems, either underlying or undercurrent or out in the open. And one of the things you need to do is to be an encourager, to build morale. I'll get to the next one, which will help you to build morale. Before you can move the organization forward, you have to build morale. If you get good morale built, you can accomplish lots of things. I've told people, when you have good morale in your organization, you can storm hell with a water pistol. When you have bad morale, when the morale is low, you can't get anyone to move off of square one. There are a lot of ways to do that, and I believe I'm going to do a future podcast on morale and how to build it with your team. Just suffice to say for this particular podcast that one of the basics is, do you give energy to the organization that you're leading? Hopefully, as a leader, you're not the person who sucks the energy out of the organization. But remember, you won't get anywhere until you decide to build morale. The last one that I'm going to mention today is the area of leadership basic is you have to have a vision. Now, it may be that when you are given a new assignment or you are promoted, that you don't immediately, within the hour, have a vision for your department, your organization, or your entity. But you need to get one. You need to get alone, study, look at where your organization has been, what has happened, what have been the victories, and what have been the defeats, and then begin to ask, where do we need to go, and how are we going to get there? And it's up to you, leader, to help build the vision. These are the basics. We need our leaders to be humble and to stay grounded. We need our leaders to realize that communication is a full-time responsibility. We need our leader to help shepherd us through the changing times and the change that must take place within our entity and organization. We have to become creative and learn to innovate. The other things that I would say that are basics of leadership, as I have mentioned, you've got to help build a good morale into the organization, and it always starts with the leader. And then, if you don't have a vision or a plan or a dream for your organization, you might ought to take a couple of days off and get alone and get a journal and get some good books and quiet yourself down and not come back. Just like Moses didn't come back down off the mountain till he had the tablets, don't come back until you have a vision of where you believe we need to be and what you believe our future needs to be. You have been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that you will consider this as your vitamin or supplement for your mind and heart today. And wherever you receive podcasts from, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom? Leave a rating and a brief written review. It will be helpful. Leadership, leaders, gets always back down to the basics. Remember, leader, you're doing better than you think you are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.